Hello everyone, my name is Jakob Löwenbrand and welcome to today's webinar. Looking forward to have 40 minutes with you here today. I hope we can get a confirmation that the sound is now working. It's working? Okay, yeah, great. Okay, sorry about that. My sound didn't work. So, today's webinar is going to be on the topic going from startup to scale up. Really going to be interesting to talk about that today, and hopefully we can share a few insights in this area. Just a quick note on me. I'm the CEO and founder of an agency called Brightvision. I started the company actually over 20 years ago, and we are totally focused on technology and marketing and helping tech companies grow and expand. So the topic today is really close to my heart and was actually the origin to the whole agency, since we started out doing technology marketing for startups in the late 90s. And it was actually my thesis. I'm an engineering dropout who got into the business school. I got caught up in the marketing and started to love that, but also interested myself for technology marketing, since that was my background at the beginning. So on my thesis, I started to work for a tech company, writing marketing plans and so on. And one thing led to the other. Their friends asked me if I could help them and so on. And 23 years later, here we are working with technology companies still as an agency. Today, we're about 65 employees working at Brightvision, and we do help primarily larger companies today. Over the years, it's grown, but we have still a big heart for startups and scale-ups, and do a lot of work for that area as well, even though the bigger clients is representing the majority of our revenue, of course. So that's a little bit of Brightvision and the background to the things that we have learned and why we think it's important to talk about going from startup to scale up, and also that we have been working with those things. So let's dive into today's topic. Finding product market fit is the thing I would like to start talking about. This has been a buzzword and something that's been really popularized by startup accelerator programs and similar things over the last 10 years. So maybe we should just agree on that a startup is an organization formed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. I think we can all agree on that. Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, he have said this: the most common mistake startups make is to solve problems no one has. In other words, we do develop stuff that really don't target a specific problem, or at least not a big problem that can make up a market for it. So product market fit, and one of the things Y Combinator talks a lot about is defined as this: product market fit means being in a good market with a product that can satisfy that market. It's actually an expression from Mark Andreessen, who had said that. It's not really him who said that originally, but at least that's been popularized by him over the last 10, 12 years. So what we mean with that is, of course, that in order to find a market and stability from a sales and revenue perspective, you need to have a segment where you can find a good revenue coming in, clients liking your things, and so on. You have firm feet, firm ground under your feet, so to say. So that is what we mean with product market fit. So just a quick tip here: if you're a startup and you're not sure that you have found the client segment that really likes your thing, don't scale up marketing and sales. Give yourself instead time to find that market. Use your money to give yourself runway and buy your time in order to explore on who's the right segment for your technology or your idea or your innovation and so on. The things I'm going to talk about here today are also strategies that are primarily working for B2B companies with technology innovations or disruptive innovations. This is a word that might implicate that you have some kind of disruption from a usage perspective, or it's a high risk decision or so. This is, of course, a gradual scale. If we have on the right side here a better mousetrap product where you just know it's pretty much the same as already existing out there, but we're a little bit cheaper, or we're green instead of blue, and so on. Really small incremental improvements to existing product category. On the other side, we have a lot of technologies coming out that really don't have a product yet, but we're looking for a problem to solve with this interesting new technology. That's really disruptive and takes a lot of effort for somebody to buy. So the electric car, for example, is a good example of disruption of usage compared to incumbent solution. We're all used to go to the gas station, fill up some petrol, and off we go with our cars. On comes the electric car, which you need to charge either at home or at the charger station. You need to download an app so you can find them. You really don't know where they are. You have to keep out for other things, as how's my battery doing? Is it cold outside? Maybe I have a lower battery efficiency today than I have in a warm day, and so on. It needs quite a lot of new usage and how to handle things in order to get the benefits from an electric car. That is a little bit of what we're going to talk about today, but not from a consumer perspective, from a business perspective. So that also takes us to the next question. What makes high-tech marketing different from traditional marketing? Well, there are a few things in this area that is different. When you want to sell a new technology, a disruptive innovation, and you want to market that to a client or customer base, and you come along, hey, look at this great technology we have found, and we're now putting that into product. Don't we want to buy it? It's a great product. That implicates that it's a lot of high risk decisions involved in that. It's an unproven product, and it's a lot of made up of promises, what the technology can do. It might do them, but we don't have a lot of proof. It's also probably, just as electric car, incompatible and having an incomplete infrastructure. I need to be willing to go 2 miles extra to find a charger station if I buy an electric car than if I just go down the block to the gas station. Also, a lot of social resistance. There's a lot of, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's probably a hoax, or that's not something I would trust, and so on. And so on. There's also very little data. We don't have a lot of reference cases. There's no company track record for most cases of startups, and definitely not a best practice or a lot of consulting practices who have developed a process to implement ERP system, for example. There's a bunch of consulting companies really doing that well because it's been around for 40 years. But for new technology solutions, there's not so much in place. So that makes it a bit more difficult. How that plays out in a community, when you introduce a new disruptive innovation into community, that have been researched quite a lot over the years, and the pioneer work in that came in the late 50s, of a guy called Evan Rogers, who wrote a book called The Diffusion of Innovations, who actually saw how an innovation was adopted in a community, and when that came along into the technology communities in Silicon Valley and other places in the late 70s and 80s and so on, they switched the name to it to call it the technology adoption lifecycle. And that is basically a bell curve that says that when a new technology comes along, a new product or a new innovation, a disruptive innovation, we have innovators at the start, and then we have the early adopters who's a bit more reluctant, but and so on. And then we work the curve from left to right in order to find the customer segments next for us, and so on. So it's a great model. It's very intuitive. And over the years, the technology communities have understood more and more who's behind those quite generic names as innovators and early majorities and so on. So we have come to talk about them on a few different other names. Technology enthusiasts, that's the innovators. What's a technology enthusiast? Well, it's somebody who likes technology for its own sake. you want to learn about things, oh, that's a cool technology. I need to test that, or I want to buy that new product, or I want to have the latest phone coming out, and so on. Somebody who not shy away from doing tech stuff himself or herself, who can patch up a phone without being hesitant, want to install a Unix kernel on the Google phone instead of having Android and so on. They want to be alpha testers. They want to demonstrate their own skills and own expertise in and so on. So they're really the first ones to jump on new technology and so on. The problem is they want to talk to tech people, don't like salespeople at all, and they don't have any money. So, so not a great customer base, but they are important though, because if you can't arouse any interest from technology enthusiasts, well, if you have a new technology, you're pretty much done, since if they are not interested, who will be, So on the after those early adopters, they are pretty much visionaries, have we come to learn. They are the ones who can see the commercial leverage and the potential of using this new product, this new technology coming out, and how we can implement that to build a business. And they are interested in getting ahead of the competition. They are willing to take a big risk and trying to go before everybody else in order to maybe get a leverage and get a revolutionized going on a revolution, a big step. They want to take a giant step, so to say, instead of doing an incremental increase to their already existing business. They are a good first customer base. However, they do have demanding a high degree of customization, and they want it now, and they are in a hurry. They can probably pay pretty well, but they have a lot of hassle with them. Big, hairy deals, as we typically call them. They are very much different from the pragmatists. The early majority, that's where the market becomes big. And if you want to have a sustainable business, you cannot, for the long term, survive on only technology enthusiasts and visionaries. You need to win over the pragmatists, the majority of the market in your category. They are very, very much different from the visionaries. They are focused on proven technologies. They want to have evolutionary productivity increases. They want to go with established product leaders and want references and want to see the things working in real life before they invest in something. So yeah, ordinary middle managers and the people who are not inventing stuff but getting things to work. The knit in every organization. In the early 90s, about 30 years ago, a guy called Jeffrey Moore came out with a book who was called Crossing the Chasm. He was working in several different marketing technology companies with marketing, and saw that the idea of taking this bell curve and working the different segments in a logical way from left to right, it's not working. A lot of companies crash and burn somewhere between visionaries and the pragmatists. Something is going wrong there. And what he came to the conclusion was that the early market, which we typically say consists of the innovators and the early adopters, they have a totally another view of and reason to buy stuff than the majority market, the mainstream market, as we call it, consisting of the early and late majority, and to some extent laggards, of course. The difference is that the early market, they buy the vision, they buy on technology, they buy what could be of this product or this solution. The mainstream market, they don't want to do that. They buy established solutions. They buy things they are proven to solve problems. They want references. They want to do low risk decisions with high data. The opposite to new technologies and new startup who comes along with a great new shiny thing that you want to sell to them. And that's what makes it so hard, because the idea was that if you go from the left to right, you build momentum from the visionaries, you use that momentum to go into the early majority and say, hey, look at our visionary clients. They're so happy with us. Now it's time for pragmatists to jump on the bandwagon and off we go together. It's not working. Actually, pragmatists turns out to hate visionaries as references. Pragmatists see themselves as the people coming in and clean up the mess after the visionaries have been fired. So it's not a great reference. And that created a chasm that did, it's really, really hard to do that jump, to do that leap for a startup coming along with a new technology. And he worked out a framework for this based on the assumption that if you want to build a sustainable business, you need to cross the chasm into the mainstream market, because that's where the money really is. And that's where you also can find repeatable business with normal clients that are not crazy visionaries all over the place and calling you in the late at night and having new ideas and so forth. You can only have a few of those, like 5-10 deals maybe. Then you need to get your plan together so you can scale it. But that also implies that you need a different market strategy for each market phase as you go along the curve. So what's work here with sales and marketing strategy does not work in the majority market. And we need to work that chasm. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. And sometimes we refer to that as the DJ's dilemma, just to give you an analogy to why it's so hard to get the pragmatists on board. When you, if you're a DJ, you want the full dance floor. But the problem is that nobody wants to make a fool out of yourself to be the first on the dance floor. It's very few people who like to do that. Yeah, ooh, I want to be the first out there, having everybody look at me and see how silly dance moves I have and so on. You know, you want to sneak in there, whereas a lot of other people doing silly dance moves and so on. It's a little bit the same problem with getting the pragmatists starting to buy from you. It's the hen and the egg problem, so to say. And that's what we're going to talk about. So different marketing strategies for each market phase. And Jeffrey Moore defined a few different concepts here. We have one different marketing concept for the early market, how to work that one. Then when it's time to cross the chasm, we have a defined market strategy for that. And when you have succeeded to do that, you can play the bowling alley strategy, which is a kind of similar strategy as the cross the chasm. And now we have the tornado strategy. And this is a very interesting concept, which we will not cover today in this webinar because we want to have time. But since the pragmatist market is moving in a herd similar type of style, they are referencing to each other. They're saying, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you? Oh, okay, no, not me there. They go to conferences to see what our IT managers, finance managers, CEOs do, and they see that when it's time to move, they move as a herd, which also creates a very strange phenomenon. When a herd stampedes, it creates a market and a market phase that Jeffrey Moore refers to as the tornado. When everybody wants to jump on the 5G technology, it's time for 5G. Okay, let's do 5G. You don't want to be the IT manager taking a risk being too early, but you don't either want to take the risk being too late and exposing your organization for a competitive disadvantage being using older technology basically. So that's what creates the hockey stick curve or the 10x factor that we typically see in so many high-tech sectors and segments or categories. And that's, of course, every startup's ultimate goal, to come out of the tornado as the category leader, since we today know that the category leader of a new technology category wins the prize quite big. Often they have a market share of 50% and a market cap or profit of 76%, since the herd is preferring the market leader. So it has a self so it's really plays out really interesting. So playing this game is really important in order to try to give yourself as good chance as possible to come out as a segment leader and the category leader after the tornado. Of course, not every technology gets into the tornado because it's not working, or somebody else came along and substituted that technology and so on. But if you have a great product that is well positioned in the great category that goes into the tornado, you're off the races. So we start out doing the finding visionary customers, because as I'm doing this now, if you can't work the early market, then you don't really need to care about the strategy for crossing the chasm, because you don't live long enough. So as a startup, you need to start working the visionary clients and start finding customers in the early market. What's so typical about finding customers that are visionary is that you should not segment on an industry basis, or not verticals, or you shouldn't think segments. You should think individuals. You should try to find the individuals who are visionary to their context, to their core, because it's very much individual preference if you are not. So you can find them in all kind of industries. You can find them in governmental or municipalities as well. There are a lot of places, but you need to find them on an individual basis, and they want to be sold on what can become of the technology or the new products that you have. They want to say, wow, this is great. I can really see how we can apply this to our situation. Maybe we can double in size if we just get this to work with our processes. And off you go. So the problem is that you don't have a ready product yet, typically not at this phase, but you need to get out there and sell what you have. So you need to make up for the things that are not existing. If they say, I want to have this to solve this problem, because that can really give us a leverage and so on. And you will say, yeah, we can do that. But there's a lot of consulting work and quite a few of integrations, things we need to do to get it work and so on. So it's more like a product-based sales, where you try to sell it as a consulting product. You say a fixed price, yeah, give us a couple of millions and we fix it. So don't try to sell it as, yeah, if you want to buy one, it's costing 10,000 kroner. If you want to have 100, we can give you a little bit of rebate. That's not the pricing model for early visionary market. You should try to get as much money on a big plate as possible. Don't sell it on the number of licenses or number of customers and so on, if it's a disruptive technology that needs to find a whole product in order to be sold. And you should look for them in different industries. Actually, it's important that you look for them in different verticals, in different industries, because you never know what uses you can try. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it's really important not to focus too early and drawing your conclusions on who's in need of your technology or your product too soon. They can show up from everywhere. That's at least my experience. So just remember this: sell the technology, sell the vision, sell your future bets, but don't segment the market. A quick example from my previous experience. This is like 20 years ago, in the early 2000s. I was a product manager at Kreatel, a Linköping-based company, who was doing, they had a development project where we said that we believe that broadband operators offering fiber to the home solutions, which was really, really big back then, and it still is. It's taking 20 years for the whole country to get it. But we saw the need for them to have more services than just broadband to offer, at least at that pricing point that was existing at that point in time. So we developed a IP-based set-top box. It's basically the old set-top box based on the IP communication protocol. And because we had technologies and beliefs in that this could be a good product, so we developed that, and it's a lot of work to do that. What we pretty much did when we went out to visit the first clients, we didn't have a product. We had some software. We had a microchip board that wasn't even in the box, and it was really, really alpha phase. But we booked meetings with the tech managers at the big broadband operators like Telia, Tele2, Bredbandsbolaget, and so forth. And we probably visited 10, 15 companies at that point. And most of them just, come back in 2 years. We're having a lot of work to do with our our incumbent solutions. Coaxial cables are doing just fine. We don't see any need for this. But we found a guy at Tele2, one of the technology directors there, that said, this is absolutely what I've been looking for. This is the solution I think will be the dominant solution for the future. This is absolutely, you're totally right. The problem was he didn't have any money, but he was a really, really important alpha tester. He opened up his organization so we could try the product in the Tele2 broadband network. We got access to the senior engineers who could come back with requests and specifications, refinements, and security problems that was really important to solve and so forth. And we understood more of how their business model was. Really, really important relationship, even though they turned out to not buy much at all at the end of the day. A few months later, when we have done that and we had a first product and so forth, and we have learned a lot from Tele2, we stumbled upon a visionary client, the first one, Fastweb in Italy, a broadband fiber to the home operator there, was really, really aggressive in that market. And they said, this is what we need. Wow, you actually have found a solution that works. And they became the first visionary client rolling out this big time in Italy from a Linköping-based company in Sweden. And that took Createl into the cash flow positive position, and they had time to work the early majority operators that took some years to get on board, and the rest is history. They were bought by Motorola a few years later for quite a nice deal. So if you can actually read about that story in a book if you would like to, only in Swedish though. Okay, how to cross the chasm. This is the most important part as a startup, how to solve that problem. You can always find a few visionary clients, you can do a few deals, hopefully. If not, maybe you should pivot and try to do another thing. But if you have an early market going, you get some traction, you have got some publicity, you have something cooking, so to say. We need to take the next step and find a bit more firm feet in the majority market. And what we need to do in order to do that is to find and conquer a beachhead segment. Think about the DJ analogy here. How to conquer Europe? Well, what the Allies did in the Second World War was that, yeah, if we want to conquer Europe, we need to focus on a very, very small part of the beaches. I mean, the beaches stretch from all the way from Nordics and Norway all the way down to south of France. Somewhere along that coast, they said, let's pick a 2-mile stretch and go in there with 500,000 men. And that's pretty much a beachhead strategy, so to say, so you know where it comes from. But picking a very, very small niche segment consisting of pragmatists in pain, which is the keyword here, with a marginalized use case. I break it down just a little bit for you. A small niche, that's a really small market, but that has something in common. A niche segment is something, a definable segment in the market, a subsegment of the market, where you can find pragmatists in pain. In order to get pragmatists on board, you need to find the ones in pain. And it cannot be a too big pain, because that's when the big companies move in. That's when Ericsson and Cisco and IBM and Google will say, that's a great problem, let's solve that. Let's invest a few $1 billion in that and take that market. And you can never compete with that if you're a startup. So you need to find a marginalized use case, a problem they are pretty much under the radar. If it's worth a few $100 million as a total market, that's way too small in order to a big company to care about. But for a startup, that's a great market. That's where you want to be. You need to find that marginalized use case. How do you find a use case that you can find a pragmatist in pain about? That's when you need to set up your market matrix, where you have problems and use cases on one side and hypothetical segments and buyer personas on the other side. And you need to see which problem is the most compelling one to the different hypotheses we probably or hopefully have learned from the visionary clients and also some market research. We are looking for problems that are really, really painful, compelling needs, as we say. So if you rank the problems and the intersections between segments or buyer personas and the different use cases and problems you solve, you need to find hopefully a really compelling one, and a process that is malfunctioned in a big business. You're looking for something that has money but has a big problem. If you can't find that, you're looking for the fourth, a moderately strong need. So if you, for example, go into a big retail chain store and say, we can solve the problem with retail chain doing badly in the stores. We can solve that problem. They are going to listen. They'll say, we are having problems. Our brick and mortar stores are doing badly. We're losing money every day. What do you suggest? We're willing to take a risk here. That's when pragmatists are willing to take risks, since they have played out all the other options. So you need to do this research and to do it well, because when you do bet, you need to come down to a single bet. You can't say, we're going to do this for these 5 segments, and we're trying to do that hopefully good in all 5 of them. Typically for a startup, you need to pick one because you don't have the resources to do that well. And one tip here, spend more time than you think is necessary on the problem side, and really understand which use cases and problems you solve, and then double it. You cannot spend too much time understanding the problems. The biggest thing, as as we talked about in the beginning here, is that too many dive into the solution side assuming they're solving an important problem. They're typically not doing that. So you need to spend more time on the problem side before you start working too much into the problem solution side. So just a reality check. Another problem is that a lot of startups choose way too big segments for their own in order to be able to succeed. So ask yourself, have we chosen a beachhead segment that is small enough? And you can sometimes refer to that as a fish to pond ratio. Have you the ability in this segment a few years from now becoming the big fish? Or is it too big? Yeah, we have Fortune 100 as our beachhead segment. That's not a beachhead segment. That's the market, that's where you compete to the big ones. You need to find a small definable segment where you can become the big fish, the category leader in a few years' time. And to be category leader, you definitely need to reach somewhere around 40% of the market share, but even better, 60%. That's when you're definitely a segment leader. And in order to do that, you need to focus on it, because that's hard. That's not an easy task. Also, when you have found your compelling needs, you also have to qualify the segment. You're not done to take that decision yet. You also have to find, is it possible to communicate to this one, or do we need to do something else? Do they have money? Is it owned by somebody else, and so on? When you have found out that, now it's time to go all in on that segment, all the chips on the table, and say, let's win this segment and make everything work so we become the best solution to this critical problem for those pragmatist buyers. Everybody else should look really shitty compared to our solution for this segment. So you need to do a high bet, high risk decision here in order to succeed. Typically, you need to build the whole product with partners and so on in order to get them on the board there. So you actually know if they don't want to buy the core technology only. They want to have partners, they want to have training, they want to have support, they want to have guarantees, they want to have big consulting companies who can support your technology and so on. So you have to fix all that in order to invest in going into that. So that's why it takes a lot of effort to build a whole product. That's why you can't spread thin on 3-4 different segments, hedging your bets, because hedging your bet will mean that you build a crappy whole product for more segments than you could if you go all in on one segment. Should you create a category and define it, or should you pick an existing one? That's a hard choice. It's always better to win and evangelize a new category if it's come natural for you. Otherwise, you really need to find a differentiation that's really, really big compared to existing incumbent solutions. You can see all the new categories coming and going and so on. And the idea with that is that, of course, if you can say we're not a new product, we're a new category, which Steve Jobs so well have done and so forth, and a lot of other legendary marketeers. But that's, of course, a great way to come out on top in your category. Then you get everybody back on their heels and trying to do catch-up game with you if you have successfully defined and evangelized a new category, and you're not selling your product, you're selling the new category. And who should you buy if you're a pragmatist buyer from the new category? From the market leader. And who's that? Well, that's you, because you defined it. It's obviously you who's the market leader. And on it goes. HubSpot is, for example, doing that quite well in the inbound market movement. The other marketing automation system is not referring to inbound as a concept. That's only HubSpot, because they are the market leader. If, for example, Marketo or somebody else in the market automation space would start referring to, yeah, we're also doing inbound, they will drive business to HubSpot. That's the logic becoming market leader. So when you communicate to your beachhead segment, you need to define those things: what you are, who you're targeting, who's your beachhead segment. So it's typical vertical. You often found the beachhead segment in small verticals. Who is dissatisfied with this compelling need? About the current market alternatives. And we are in new or existing product categories. So you frame the arena you're competing in. And we have this ability to solve this really urgent problem. And unless the competitors, we have a really high competition, high differentiation. And when you've done that really well, and I must say, I think the strategy have proven itself to work so well. Of course, there can be examples of things where you're not working, but I have seen lots and lots of examples of tech startups who have carved out a niche and they have found a good business there. Maybe it's not a great business, but they have become a sustainable company in that niche, and then they can go on from there. And that's when you start playing the bowling alley. When you have knocked down your head pin, which is your beachhead segment, you can start knocking down really related segments or applications that are really close to the beachhead segment. And you start working the bowling alley. And if you're lucky and do this well, the market and the category might turn into a tornado phase when everybody says, holy cow, everybody's buying this technology. We need to get on this bandwagon. And every pragmatist buyer wants a piece of your technology, or at least the category technology. I will close up with a real-life example from actually a Gothenburg startup, Spotfire. It was founded in the late 90s. And the founder there, Christopher Olberg, he was a doctor at Chalmers and also in Maryland, Massachusetts, who invented a new way of visualizing complex data sets. They knew, and he had some colleagues there that said, this must be possible to turn into product, but they really didn't know what kind of problem they were looking for. So they were really this technology looking for a problem to solve kind of startup. And they tried to sell this to all kind of use cases and so on. And just by a coincidence, they stumbled upon big pharma and drug discovery, who had a use case that was really perfect for this kind of visualization of data sets. So they came into the big pharma and drug discovery process, get an early visionary client on board, and in only 2-3 years time, they had closed deals as a small startup with the 50 top big pharmas globally. So that catapulted the company into market leader in that niche. And from there, they went into other data sets and verticals that could have similar problems. But that really built the company. And Tipico bought it 10 years later for quite a hefty sum. So it was really, you can still buy this solution. It's in the Tipico portfolio today. And it's a really example of a great successful startup doing this play really well. And Christoph Olberg always refers to the Crossing the Chasm as a great read as well. If you want to have any help with this, I think maybe we should need to toss some ideas or have somebody external to look at this. We will, of course, be happy to help you in doing so. So that's pretty much it. Time's a few minutes over. I'm so happy for you to have listened in. I will now see if there's any questions if you want to ask. So go ahead. I'll still be on here for a few minutes. If not, I'm so thankful for joining me for this 40 minutes today. Hopefully you have got some ideas with you that you can bring on to your startup, to your company. And if not, I wish you a great day. So let's see the question parts here. Okay. Not so much question. I think we end it here. Thank you so much for today. Bye.